Good morning. Did you know that an estimated 575 million people worldwide are currently dealing with an anxiety disorder or depression? This statistic by the World Health Organization does not even take into account the tens of millions of individuals currently dealing with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. The unfortunate reality is that these numbers are only increasing, and there's no long-term solution in sight. Now, before we dive deeper, let us introduce the team. We have Stephanie, Sunny, Dennis, Natasha, Jose, and I'm Alex. We are NeuRelief, providing cognitive relief for the generations of today and tomorrow. Collectively, we have immersed ourselves on the topic of mental health and spoke with multiple industry professionals. The information that we've received has allowed us to craft a one-of-a-kind solution which we hope will help eradicate one of the biggest growing problems in the world today, mental illness. Now, let me tell you a couple brief facts to paint a little bit of a picture. Right now in the United States, 28.7% of the population, or 95.3 million people, are currently dealing with some form of mental illness. Additionally, mental illness is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Now, you may ask, why did we choose to get into this field? Well, at NeuRelief, we want to empower individuals to take back the control of their life. But even more than that, we have personal experiences that make this issue very close to our heart. And I would like to tell you guys my personal story. Growing up, I had a very close friend of mine who was the happiest guy you'd ever meet. I always tell him that he's got $1 million smile, because when he walks into a room, it lights up the whole room. On the outside, he was the most joyful person we knew. But on the inside, that wasn't the case. And that's something that we didn't know. Once we graduated high school, myself and the majority of our friend group moved to new areas to study at university, while my friend stayed back at home to focus on his degree in our hometown. Over the next few years, his mental imbalances and his depression became so severe that he needed to be prescribed stronger medication. And in time, this medication had little to no effect. His frustrations and pain led him to use heroin for relief. After going to rehab and becoming sober, about 5 months later, his mental demons returned, and this resulted in him having a relapse. This relapse resulted in an overdose, and this overdose killed my friend. The saddest part is that if any of us would have known at any point in his life, we would have done anything we could to help him. But the realistic part of it is that my friend is not alone. We must harness these up-and-coming and current technologies to find a cure to this devastating illness.
The case of Alex's friend is dramatic, and like him, there are many. Just in the US, there are more than 2.2 million veterans living with some psychiatric disorder. In fact, 1 in 5 adults are living with some mental illness. So that means that more than 44 people in the United States have to be treated. And the cost of this is huge. If we just consider anxiety disorders, which includes phobia, panic disorder, and post-stress traumatic disorders, the cost for the US government is around $42 billion, and even more. Researchers predict that by 2030, the global impact of the economy will be $16 trillion, including treatments, mental care institutions, and productivity losses. And what's happening in our brain when we are suffering some mental condition or a mental illness is that our neurons have either a deficient or excessive electrical impulses that affects our neurotransmitters, and then the communication between our neurons. Drugs today are treating these conditions by chemical effects. But we know that although these pharma developments, we are far from the perfect solution for treatments. So we would like to show you a case to illustrate this problem.
Hello, I'm Sam. I recently started feeling like I was struggling with anxiety and mild depression. With this, I felt like my life was stuck while my colleagues were progressing in life. With these symptoms, I simply started researching on internet and I went to see my doctor. My doctor simply wrote me a referral to go visit a psychiatrist. Thinking about the time and the treatment, I went to see the psychiatrist and he suggested me to go for therapy and prescribed me new drugs. With this, to get the right treatment, adding each and every cost of every therapy, quarterly appointments with my psychiatrist, and new prescription of drugs was way beyond my budget. In addition to this, there was no guarantee of cure, and there was no time frame in order to feel better. With this process of treatment and regular stress, it made me feel more depressed.
So to deal with cases like Sam's, and in order to get a better understanding of our brain applying innovative technologies, the US government launched the Brain Initiative. And one of the main participants of this initiative is DARPA, the research wing of the Pentagon. And DARPA is working closely with the University of San Francisco and the University of Berkeley. And together they are developing these tiny devices to implant in our brain to detect the abnormal brain activity and deliver the right stimulation, the electrical stimulation, to alleviate the symptoms product of mental illness. So working with this technology and using it, we want to go further and take the brain implants to the next level. We would like to be able to prevent and even predict neuropsychiatric conditions such as depression or anxiety, and use these implants as a vaccine 2.0. And we coined this term vaccine 2.0 because we want that the neuro implants to become the next standard as vaccines are today. So working closely with governments and international organizations, our goal is to prevent and to eradicate mental illness, as we already did with some viruses like, for example, smallpox in some countries. So using this moonshot technology, let's come back and review the SAM situation again by 2030.
So now it's 2030, and here's Sam. This solution changes the life of people like Sam drastically. Let's just imagine how it has been. Having a family history of a variety of mental illnesses, Sam's parents were alert. And at a fairly young age, they brought him in to let him receive his neural implant, which would prevent potential mental illnesses from further developing. Just a one-time treatment. And now, more than 20 years later, Sam is doing well. He has completed his studies, has been engaged in social activities, but moreover, he feels included and welcome in his own life.
Now, we have pointed out during this talk some shocking facts and statistics about mental health. Now we'll give you a few more before we move over to see the potential benefit to society as a whole when scaling NeuRelief. At this very moment, there are about 10 million Americans suffering from serious mental illnesses. 1.8 million out of the 25 million children between the ages of 12 to 17 are dropping out of school because of it. And on top of that, every year we're sending 2 million people with mental illnesses to prison. Our solution will allow these kids to finish high school, get their college diploma, and we will empower people to take back control of their life. And if we assume that the mental illnesses had a significant impact on the crimes that were committed, we're keeping these people out of a very dangerous environment. But how does this all look translated into numbers? The United States will be freeing up about $193 billion currently spent on treatments. If we assume that the 10 million people go from 0% to 100% value creation, we see a GDP growth of about $600 billion. And for the inmates, Did you guys know that it costs the American taxpayers $31,000 a year to host one inmate? We see the potential savings of $62 billion. Now, together, this is roughly $855 billion ready for reinvestment, not to mention all the fiscal assets that we're freeing up as well. So where are we going to put this money? Well, according to the United Nations, it'll take roughly $30 billion every year to end world hunger. We can do this for 28 years. This is enough to fund 22 million US college degrees, or even multiply the budget for the National Cancer Institute 150 times.
We are well aware that our product may raise some ethical questions. Indeed, is the implant going to tamper with the brain development of the kids, or change the behavior or personality of adults? No, because we are conducting all the necessary research to avoid this pitfall. And remember, to get the FDA approval of a product and commercialize it, it has to be safe. Then the other question, are we going to be able to hack the brains? Here, no again, because our implant is in a part of the brain that regulates the emotions. It doesn't enable you to control the person. And indeed, I mean, as the technology of the chip is going to progress, we're going to develop a cybersecurity solution to prevent this from happening. And last but not least, isn't it the next stage for brain enhancement? Are we going to create like superhumans and leading to a society where the gap between the haves and have-nots is going to widen? Here again, I'll say no, because we'll have the right regulation in place by the time the technology will be right for it. What we're doing now, we're really proactive. We're having an ethical committee working closely with international, governmental, and non-governmental institutions to tackle that question. And we have a special clause with our researchers to avoid any ethical dumping with countries with weaker regulations.
Now, as you all have seen today, there's a dire need to improve the current state of mental health solutions. The NeuRelief team is determined to eradicate the growing problem of mental illness, and we are confident that our neural implant is the long-term solution. We are asking for $1 billion, which we will use on the following. First, we must research the effects and implications of a neural implant on the brain to assure a smooth adoption. After research and development, we will utilize various forms of testing to make sure that our chip is operating at peak performance. And the rest of the funding will be used to transform this current proof of concept to a commercially available product. Why do we believe this is a billion-dollar idea? Well, the NeuRelief neural implant is going to nip the problem in the bud the second the cognitive imbalance occurs, preventing this illness from ever coming to the surface and the individual needing to deal with it. But more importantly, your investment in our neural implant will not only improve, but can literally save millions of lives. Now, as you guys may remember, earlier in the presentation, we mentioned that 1 in 5 adults are currently dealing with some level of mental illness. Going off that statistic, there are 12 people in this very room whose lives could be improved by the development and the funding of our neural implant. So let's join together and give them NeuRelief. Thank you.